the BLERD official podcast. We are so happy that you are here. We've got the Batman. We are talking about the movie. We are all fresh from the theaters. We're super excited to be with you this week. Oh my gosh. But before we go any further, let me introduce my host, Hilton George, Mr. BLERD Con himself. How are you?
Oh man, I'm just full of all kinds of Gotham City. I still got my shoes are still wet from being in the movie. I'm telling you. I'm so ready to I wish we could do this like in the theater where we could like all sync up and be talking through the movie. And,
I know. We need to like
get put out together.
We need to watch it together and like almost have mics and like just like commentary. Like the commentary between the three of us would be crazy. Yeah. Okay. Also, we've got Christi Renee with us. Christi, how are you?
I am ready to fly away. I am so happy. Y'all pressed me. I was determined. Like, let me go do a homework assignment for once.
Hold up. Here, Christi, you get the homework award of the year. Christi actually did her homework.
On time.
I don't know if this is a trophy for your homework. I'll give you one when I see you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because y'all know, BLERD, come on, BOP listeners, y'all know this girl will not do her homework, but she did her homework this time.
And I still be smart though. Excited. I'm still smart. Whether I do my homework or not, I have an opinion regardless.
I know you're Bob Hope. She will have an opinion and she will co-sign things she don't even know what she's talking about. But that's why we love her.
Real good. Yes.
Now okay, so guys, let's cut to the chase. I saw this movie, and you guys know, I am not a diehard DC fan. They have lost me throughout the years. They have made decisions that have been questionable. That as a BLERD, as a fan, as someone who's followed these movies since I was a kid, they've upset me. But they did not upset me with the Batman. They did not. Honestly, I went in there and I felt like I honestly went in there with a clear mind and was like, I'm going to either love it or I'm going to hate it. I had no preconceived notions, which is probably the best way to approach a movie. But I was, from the opening scene, I could not take my eyes off of this movie. Mm-hmm. It was, how can I say this? It was just like brilliantly tragic. It was like scary when I didn't realize I was going to be creeped out on certain things. Mm-hmm. I felt like they did this film justice. And so let's dive into this because I know that you guys, I know Hilton has been reading comics since he was like barely born. And yeah, he was a baby. And you're the comic book, like probably one of the most like knowledgeable comic book people that I know. How do you feel that this movie, how did you feel it stood up to the original stories that came from the comics?
You know, I think it's important to note that DC does better when it goes dark, because if you want to think about the differentiation between Marvel Comics and DC Comics are at their best when it's dark and it's scary, and they do amazing work with horror and sci-fi and all of that mix. And I think that these last couple of movies, and I'm including the Snyder Cut and the Nolanverse into this discussion about the DC as far as context is concerned. Mm-hmm. This is the turn that I wish DC had made years ago. And that they have not embraced. Now, from the top down, I think that there's a lot of executives who saw the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and did everything they could to try and emulate or imitate, whatever you want to call it.
You've already lost when you do that.
Yeah, I feel like that's where you always find them lacking something. You know, they have one-off movies that people like more than others, but in general, people are not in love with the universe that was being created with DC. I think someone somewhere is standing up in these boardrooms and saying, hey, listen, let's own our lane. Let's go dark. Let's go gritty. Let's take television series like Swamp Thing. Let's take, the Nolanverse, as dark as The Dark Knight was, as dark as, Batman Begins was, as dark as The Dark Knight Rises was. And let's just own that. We go into the Snyderverse and let's just
Absolutely.
embrace it. So this movie, as soon as the credits come open, as soon as the movie starts, you are sucked into this world that is missing
Yeah.
missing
that sound effect.
fundamental elemental pieces of the color palette. There's
Oh.
yellow isn't in there. It's like it's really saturated.
Yeah.
And it's dark and it's wet and it's cold and it stays there the entire
Yes.
movie. It does not do anything to redeem Gotham. It does not do anything to bring
Yeah.
joy to the screen. It is funny in like very small pockets.
Subtle ways.
This-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyone who hasn't seen this movie, I want you to think about something. Just look for a reference.
Okay.
Think about the movie Seven, right, with Brad Pitt.
Oh.
And,
Yes!
and Morgan Freeman. This is the kind of movie that is set up in that way, and it has got horror, it's murder mystery, it's creepy.
Yeah.
It's the crime-solving part of the Batman mythos that they do not always tell. See, Batman when he began was not this super crime-fighting, I'm going to punch out 30 people at a time, superhero. That was not his inception. His
Right.
moniker was, under Detective Comics, DC, the greatest detective on earth. That was his title.
Yep.
And here he gets to jump into that. And I mean, from the minute he shows up, I mean, you probably saw my review. Gotham City is a character in this movie.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
it
you
is.
really feel the hurt and the darkness and the dismal, I felt like my shoes were wet.
Right.
I
I
got
felt
halfway through
cold.
this movie.
Yeah. I was like,
So
Yeah.
bravo. I mean, this was so well done, so well written.
Man.
So
well cast.
yeah.
Pattinson's Batman was something a lot of people were worried about.
Ooh.
He
And they ain't got to worry about that no more.
Nope.
You ain't got to worry about it.
Nope.
We got us. And if he decides to play this Batman for the next, decade, I think
Right.
that we are in good hands.
Yes.
With Robert Pattinson playing him.
It's
So
so
yes.
funny how many Robert Pattinson fans were created last Friday or last week.
Yeah.
Because
Yesterday
everyone,
for me.
like, it was like, I mean, even the people, the naysayers, like, when they found out that he was cast as Batman, I mean, you would have thought, like, I mean, they went ballistic. They went crazy. The fandom was like, they were starting petitions. And I get it. I get why the director picked him because, like you said, this movie, I don't understand why DC has never clung on to the darkness. Like, they needed to be dark 10 years ago. Like, this movie, like, okay, you see the success with Marvel, and you see the success with all these other films, but if I have stories where I have, psychopaths and serial killers, and you think about what the Riddler was doing in this movie, it has to be dark. There's no room to have a joke. There's no room to ham it up, and I don't understand. Because in the past, I've loved, some of the people who've played the different characters, and I've loved some of the stuff that they've done. But it's always been, DC to me has always been a movie that had like these cartoon characters in it, and it was like, why go so cheesy or go so over the top? I understand, they were trying to find their lane. It was so weird to me that they always felt like they couldn't find their lane, or they were always searching, or they were. And every single person in this movie was perfectly cast. And like you said, I felt like my shoes were wet. I felt cold chills. I remember at one point in the movie where I like looked around the theater and was like, this is way close to what's happening in the world right now. And this could honestly, this is what's happening in certain fringe groups and stuff. And I just like looked around and was like, oh my gosh, this is like freaking me out, but that's what it needs to be. Like, I love the Detective Batman. I loved it. Like, I loved how, because if you think about it, Batman really doesn't have any like superpowers, any extraordinary, he doesn't have any strength that is, So why not lean into his intelligence and lean into, his youth? I love that Robert Pattinson was younger. And it really laid the foundation for me because you think about this. If you think about the story and you think about, his parents were murdered in front of him. I don't know any man who would be this charismatic playboy after surviving that kind of trauma. He needs to be like they said, the emo Batman. He should be that. Like it made the most sense, right? It made so much sense that he was so dark, he was so edgy, he was so tragic, he was so troubled. It just made so much sense. So I mean, Robert Pattinson, A+, A+, A+. Christi, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so listen, I have grown up watching Batman. I remember my summers all the way down in Brenham, Texas, where Bluebell is made, and watching the, Adam West as Batman. And then first and foremost, my favorite for so long was always Michael Keaton, the very beginning. That was like the beginning, as far as movies go for me. And of course, with Prince doing the soundtrack, that was it. That was like, I can watch Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton and Prince, and that's a gift, right? So through the years, I struggled a bit. I mean, I like George Clooney. I couldn't say what I didn't like was, and I've said this before, I didn't like the evolution of this voice that they did with him when he was masked. I was not a fan of Christian Bale being, kudos, whatever, for getting the role, but I just wasn't a fan. That wasn't my Batman. So I would retreat back to my original. But let me say, I'm a one up y'all on this cinematic
me
comparison. If Kevin Spacey's character from Seven and Jigsaw had a baby, that would be Batman. The Riddler, horrifying again. And let me just say this. First of all, Jim Carrey can do no wrong.
Right.
Ever in life.
But you know what? That was the direction he was given. Like that was the movie they made. They almost made it was like a cartoon over the top version.
And I loved it. And that was probably one of the last ones that I loved, other than when, of course, God rest his soul, Heath Ledger as the Joker. Like those were, because again, that's when they started to shift and go in a different direction. I'm sure there's all different directors doing stuff and bringing their vision, but I loved this movie. They got Robert Wright. I mean, he didn't growl in the mask. I love Kravitz. Girl, listen, if you ain't your mama, I don't know, and your dad, it's just like either way,
she was poetry in motion.
Yes, either way, I'm so happy to look at you because your mama is beautiful, your daddy is beautifuler. Like it was so happy. But
Zoe was everything.
She did it, and it was a great homage to Eartha Kitt, being Catwoman back in the day, and that was trailblazing in and of itself. And then the messages, so many messages. The fact that the writers took the opportunity to put into this film, very relative to today, a parallel. I mean, we're always headed to either Gotham or Gilead. So either way, I don't know which road y'all want to take, but we're on those roads. And I will say, when she took a moment to say the white male privilege and point that out towards the end, and just, I'm tired of these old white men, and they run I was like, yo, again, because it really does. And all he could do was like, in his sentiment, agree and then kiss. Like, girl, you said that. And I just loved it.
So you brought up a very good point, Christi. You brought up, how it was so timely to this time. And what was shocking to me, what actually was very surprising to me, is that the script for this movie was written. I've been obsessed ever since I saw it. I started reading every article, started getting into, I was trying to get into the director's head. I'm one of those obsessive people, but the script was written in 2017. So this was actually before anything happened. This was before, one of the pivotal scenes. So if you have not watched the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, we're about to dive deep. So don't so exit the building, exit this episode, because we are about to take a deep dive. No more surface talk. But one of the biggest scenes was, they catch the Riddler. you think, oh man, they got him, and he, instantly Batman realizes that there is more happening.
The
There are
social
more
media. I
clues.
knew it was coming. It was
There
too
was,
much.
yeah.
That little bitty following, but they could do
Yeah.
damage. That little bitty
Yeah.
following.
And it was like there was more underneath the surface. So catching him was a part of the whole riddle. Catching him was a part of the whole plan. And you soon find out that he has, connected on social media
Minions.
to other people. Yeah. Other men who feel the same way that he felt, who felt like they were wronged in life and they needed to get justice. And it's not like justice, like good justice. It's like violent justice,
It's their version of, what the world should be when,
Yeah.
And
it's one of those things where it's like, it's such a twisted, like you can't think that you're seeking justice if you're killing people. Like, I mean, it doesn't, like, it is the most weirdest thing, but it just, like, that was the moment that gave me chills, because it just brought back the memories of like January 6th storming the Capitol in their fatigues and their mask, and they're like, we're getting justice, and we're going to make this government pay. And it was just so like, and it also took me into a place where like I said, I looked around the theater, because, like these mass shootings, these like things that happen at, schools and theaters and malls. And it just made me go, oh my gosh. Like, and so I love the fact that when they realized like what had happened currently, and they thought about changing the ending, and they thought about maybe this is striking a little too close to what is happening right now. I am so thankful that the producers, the director, and all of them said, no, we cannot take that out. Like, it needs to be this realistic. And I felt like this was the first Batman movie that I watched that honestly had a realistic plot from start to end. And it had characters who actually you've got the groundwork as to why Batman goes from just Batman vengeance, like where he's getting vengeance for his parents' death, to needing it to mean more to him, needing it to be more meaningful. You get the groundwork for Selena, like you mentioned her, and just how she becomes Catwoman. In this movie, this is the start of Selena. She's not Catwoman yet, but you see why she becomes this character later on. And oh man, like I said, it was just magically terrifying.
Yes.
Well, what you're talking about, what I think is what you're talking about is the effect. I think the success of what this movie brought about, or the success of the movie in general, is that there was that sense of vulnerability to the point where you kind of even stepped outside of the theater experience and was like, wow, this is hitting so close to home that I need to actually kind of, where am I? Like, who's sitting in here with me?
Check your surroundings.
Like, right.
Around.
I did that. I was like, yeah, everybody cool? Everybody cool.
Yeah, because like up till then, the Riddler was going after individuals who we were not. What movies do is in formula, and you can see this in any movie where people are killed, especially horror movies, is that the movie asks permission first before they kill a character. So they show some demeaning quality of this person, or something that they have done that makes us as the audience go, oh, okay. So when that person dies, it's not this, oh my God, like they killed this innocent person, blah, blah, blah. Right. This movie did it in reverse. They were killing people to whom which we did not know their flaws and crimes and negative shadow side until long after they had been murdered right in front of us on screen. And so we're with the mayor when he's walking around his office and looking at the screen, and the Riddler, is standing in the shadow, and he's not even seeing him. He stood there for like 5 minutes, and you just know it's coming. And the guy is just like, if you turn your head slightly to the right, you'll see Murder standing right behind you, and he is not even there. And I mean, by the time it happens, it's so brutal and so sudden, and it's just so. It's just this amazing, horror story. And I think the idea of comparing it to Saw and Seven and movies like it is exactly where this movie goes. And so it also does the same thing with Gotham, because remember, we're sitting here watching him pick off people. We're like, oh, that's where this guy is going. He knows something about these people that we don't know, that has shown that they have irredeemable qualities or lack thereof, and therefore they have been targeted. So there is a qualification for them being murdered, and I can feel a little safer. But you don't realize is that his war is against Gotham City, period.
Yeah.
Right.
He wants Gotham to die, not just the people who've done certain things. Hence, when they start blowing up, you know, the waterways or whatever, you know, the seawall, and it starts coming in, you're like, oh, this guy's trying to take out the whole city.
Right.
Like, he really does. When he's done, he wants Gotham to be gone.
Wants it all to burn. But I loved how you said where we got, you know, it was like almost opposite, where it was almost like that onion peeling. Like when one layer came off, we got a little bit. Then another layer came off, we got a little bit. And the whole time we're thinking, okay, well, he's just killing this corrupt government officials, these corrupt cops, these people who did him wrong, you know. And then it was even surprising when we saw him, you know, go after Bruce, and you know, it was like, but then when at the end, when we realized he wanted the city to burn, it was just like, oh my, like, again, it's what a psychopath would do. That's what a crazy person would do. They don't just stop. Like, they have this warped, you know, this warped vision of what the world is and what it's done to them. And it was poetry.
Yeah.
Like, it was poetry.
Yes. What they did, I mean, speaking to that point, first of all, this is like one of my favorite genres of it's psychological, it's thrilling, it's scary. Cause I'm telling you, Hilton, you hit it on the head, honey. When he was in the office and walked by, and that day, I said, he Michael Myered us. I am
like psychological.
Like, this is the kind of movie it's about. It
won. It won me. Okay. I was like, this is the beginning, and we doing Mike now. Okay. So the thing is, though, what they did so poetically, this is the frightening reality of the world we live in, is that up until a certain point, a part of you almost sides with the Riddler, because he makes these points about no more lies. I'm sick of this crap. I'm sick of it. And we all are. Like, you're making a valid point, and you only, if you have an ounce of sanity in your body, do you pull yourself back off the ledge and say, well, now, damn it, we can't just be killing everybody just because we disagree. Like, that's where
way to deal with it.
That's what separates sane from insane, and killers from not killers, you know, or whatever, the good from the bad, if you will. You know, it is, they did it so brilliantly, but I had to question myself, like, well, wait a minute, because I'm over here while he's talking and yelling, you know, even when he's calm and he's in that voice and it's spooky, and you know, on the FaceTime, it's so freaking modern. I love that.
I did too.
But it's like, even when he's talking, I found myself going, and of course the kids are on both sides of me, like, damn, can you be quiet? I know, I get it. I'm sorry. But I was like, Mom. I went to church for a second. I was like, yeah, ooh, and then I was like,
she always goes to church when the movie gets good. She goes to church. I love that about you.
Lord, I'm agreeing with this psychopath. I must be crazy. But then it's like you get to a point where I'm like, okay, but no, that's too far. Now I'm not building contraptions, and the contraptions were just out of this world. That's why I said I immediately thought of Jigsaw, and I was like, this is a Saw movie. Like, the things, I mean, it was almost like, again, whoever designed that was gotta be a fan, you know.
Kudos to them,
we're so close. We are this close as humans. We're so close, and you have to figure out which outweighs the other. And I think that's a great charge for a film, you know, to cinematically charge you as an individual, as a viewer, with what side do you really stand up? Because ultimately, that's what it always will come down to at the start of any day and at the end of the day.
Well, that's what a good movie will do to you. I feel like a good movie is going to make you weigh every side of the coin. Like, they're going to literally trigger you in different ways and make you go, okay, should I be thinking this? Or am I the only one? Like, am I the only one thinking this? That's what a good movie should do, especially a thriller. Like, that was
Yeah.
the whole detective thriller I mean, I
Yeah.
was psychologically spent when I got out of that movie. And this is the thing. Thing. My husband
She
couldn't
needs
come
some
with
ice
me.
cream.
Yeah, I went by myself.
Oh, girl, no.
Yeah. So you go
No.
into the movie and it's light, and then by the time I got out, it was dark. I'm telling you, I was walking around like, oh my goodness, it was like, okay, let me just get it together, because it was that good. But that's what I love. That's why I love movies. That's why I love television shows, because I use it to get lost. And this one, I mean, I didn't expect to get, psychologically.
You got sucked in.
Yeah.
You were in that world, and it didn't let you go. I mean, kudos to Christi that she kind of was able to step out of herself at certain points and kind of, question.
I did, and I was like this.
And you, Karen, to kind of look around. But I was in Gotham all 3 hours. I really
I was there.
It just sucked me in, and I was lost, and I was waiting for an opportunity to step out of myself to kind of, mini critique where I've been up to that point, little check-in, and over a 3-hour movie. But it goes even deeper, I think, than what a lot of people are going to see. And for those of you who don't like spoilers, you're going to love this. The similarities between Bruce Wayne and the Riddler is really very, very clear. They're both orphans. They're both roughly the same age. There's even a picture where the two of them are in the same place at the same time as kids.
Yeah.
Right. And if you notice in the beginning of the film, you notice him in his detective work. He's got those contacts that record everything he sees. Remember that? And then he goes to his book and he starts writing down everything that happened and everything he saw.
Yep.
Remember when they broke into the Riddler's lair and they were like, he's got all these stacks of diaries of everything that he had seen.
Yep.
And I was like, that looks exactly like the diaries that my man Bruce was using in the Batcave, jotting down all this stuff. And it's just like they just went in these different directions. And he even admitted as much, in the last scene where they're, he's locked up. He was like, I took inspiration from you. He's like, just using fear and some targeted violence, I can drive, my point home. I can, get this city to do what I want it to do, and I can enact my mission. And if you'll notice, like all throughout the movie, when they put the bat signal up, people who were doing crime and there's no Batman around, they're like, oh snap. And then like, I wonder who's in that shadow over here.
He's
Let me take
watching
off
me.
and get out of here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's like, I don't have to be everywhere, but I am the shadow. Right. And so the Riddler is kind of taking that same mission on and that same tactic on. And he's like publicly executing in these horrific ways these public figures and leaving these recordings and leaving these breadcrumbs and just driving everybody to, be where he wants them to be when the water starts coming and when, his final plan takes place. Everyone's going, he knew where everyone was going to go when the city fled. And then he said, okay, that's where he's sending his minions. All of them come in. They got their guns. They got everything. They're sitting up on the rafters and they're just there to just start picking people off. And he was just like, this is the mission. Good luck, everybody. Mission accomplished. And I'm just like, you don't get any darker than that.
No,
you don't.
Listen,
it's not until after that. It's not until after all of that you actually get to see the sun for the first time.
Right.
Like there's no sun. Like there's sunlight. Like it's daytime, but the sun.
It's overcast.
It was gray. It was like Seattle the whole time.
He goes from the vengeance to the hero and the justice. It starts saving people and being that symbol. And you see that evolution, just like Karen was saying. And I'm just like, this was so mature. It takes so much trust in the audience to say, we're not gonna make, and I said this in my review, thank you for making 1 3-hour movie and not making 2 2-hour movies out of this. Because you could have done that and it would have been a Hunger Games situation.
Yeah, it would have been terrible.
It
would have been terrible. You'd be like, it's just a cash grab. Like, give it to us. Give us the full poetic, like, it was almost like a song. Let the song play in its entirety. Like, don't chop it up and, give us a remix. Give us from start to finish, And I mean, okay, so I give, I need an Oscar to go to the set design,
Yeah.
I need
all
an
of them.
Oscar to go to the casting agent.
Yeah.
I need.
Do they give
They
Oscars for
do. They
casting?
do. Those are the
Okay, all
awards you
right.
don't see, or they give them out the day before. So let's talk about Zoe Kravitz. We just gotta give her a whole section.
I ain't got no problem with that.
You know what I'm saying?
Ain't
I
got
think
no problem with that over here.
every man wanted to marry her, and every woman wanted to be her. Like
Yeah.
she was. I just loved how subtle she was. Like everything she did, she had like a vulnerability, she had an innocence, she had a toughness, but then she also had like when she walked like a cat, but it wasn't like, it didn't feel like a
Intentional.
joke.
Right.
Yeah,
It wasn't choreographed.
Yeah, it didn't feel like this character, this like,
It was
you know,
organic.
that's where I think a lot of the women who've played, because they've had some wonderful actresses play Catwoman in the past, but what they've done is they did like a literal take, like they wanted to like be a literal cat, and I get it. That's what worked in the, you know, when Eartha Kitt did it, but that was like in the, what is that, 60s and 70s that was that time. But when you have a movie like this, it's present day, that is encompassed in this like dark world,
ain't nobody furring around here.
Yeah,
I mean,
you wanted it, but you wanted the subtlety of it. You didn't need to be force fed. We all knew who she was going to be and who she was playing, and I just loved her take on it, man.
She just natural essence, that she walked probably how she, you know, would walk.
She's a sexy woman, right? Like
in
she
her own
like that anyway.
she put her own intention into it. It wasn't some, again, you know, it wasn't some orchestrated thing. It didn't feel like it, at least. I'm sure she had direction, but it didn't make you feel like someone was having to tell her or teach her how to be this character. She just, an animal. It felt so natural. Yeah, it just felt like she just embodies that naturally. Yeah, she's dope. You know, I have to say, because we talk about Zoe, but I just read an article this morning, Huffington Post did an article about how Lisa and Lenny her parents had already talked about back in when Anne Hathaway, who I love Anne Hathaway. However, when she was Catwoman at one point, you know, Zoe was up for that. And and her parents made it known to her and made it publicly known that you didn't, you know, because a casting person used the word urban. We're just not going in that urban direction. And so, which is so bizarre to me, because baby, we can barely afford to live in these areas y'all call urban down here in these downtowns. So, and they go on to talk about that.
Well, that's just the politically correct way of saying you're too black.
You're too black, right? We ain't going for black people in this movie. Yeah. I loved what they did. I mean, just speaking culturally, like to have the black male woman candidate. I mean, again, you're right. They 2017. How perfect is it? It's, you know, where we were in the world at that time, and so we're a year into Crazy Land, and so it was just so apropos to have the cast the way they did. Jeffrey Wright can do no wrong. Is it Jeffrey Wright? Yes, Jeffrey Wright can do no wrong. Now he was a detective that worked alongside Batman. He was
James Gordon. He wasn't Commissioner Gordon here.
Oh, just yet. Yeah, he becomes.
He's not Commissioner, but yes, that's who he's best known as.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
He was just like, I mean, the chemistry between him and Robert Pattinson, like it was like
great.
It was.
I like this
amazing.
take. Yeah. I think his Jim Gordon is on par with the Nolanverse take on Jim Gordon. You know, this guy who's in the middle of this corrupt system, who's trying to do as right as he can and be as effective as he can, and bring as much good out of what he knows is a system that is, and a department that is riddled with corruption, and it addresses that in the movie.
Is that
but I want to circle back.
Wait, I want to ask you a question though, because educate me. I don't know the people who created certain versions of these characters. Are you talking about Gary Oldman, who played the character
Well, Gary Oldman played the character, but the take on where the character is, you'll see
Yeah.
Jim Gordon across every
No, I
iteration
know.
of
I know.
Batman.
I was just
And I
wondering if
think
that's
that
the
this,
version, because I felt like that was
yes,
what he
that's the
reminded
Nolan
me.
verse. All
That's
the
what I'm
Nolan
at. Yeah, that's what
trilogy.
I'm
Yes,
asking.
that's
Yeah.
that's the one.
For people like me
But
who
circling
don't.
back
Yeah.
to Zoe Kravitz, I think that what she was able to do is play as much of an, I don't want to say this was her character, but she was so natural doing and just down to the lines. She got to play like a wider range than she normally gets asked to do, because she goes from like horror to just absolute rage to sultry to I'm about to be that she hits like all these notes, and they don't skip a beat. There is no character in this movie. Like, I think that she is probably as much a developed character in this movie as Robert Pattinson's Batman is. I mean, she gets as much of an arc and a backstory that, quite frankly, they didn't even really go into the origin, which I think is great, because I think they, again, investing in the audience,
we have time for that.
Telling people, okay, we know how Batman was created. We don't have to see his parents getting shot in the alley and the pearls and all this. And, let's just go forward and tell the story, so that we can kind of pick up and be invested in the Batman story that we're in right now. And I think what we saw was basically a young Batman who hasn't really embraced. As you can see, he's not the playboy billionaire. He's not even playing that role. Whereas Christian Bale was a little bit portraying more of a mature one that has kind of mastered I got to put on the playboy billionaire mask and go out here and show people who I'm not, but then I also got to go out and do the Batman stuff. This guy's like, I'm not interested in that at all.
Yeah, well, they said in the timeline that this is currently, like, he'd only been the Batman for about 2 years, according to this script and according to this timeline. He hadn't, like, the other versions that we've seen have been far into the future. So this is like where he's only been doing this for 2 years. And he was like, he was the young version. So I think eventually, but that's the thing, they always kind of dropped us into, like you said, this playboy, like charismatic ladies man. Yeah.
Yeah, they
and to me, we never understood. Like, I never understood how is he that? And then he saw his parents die. Like, you know what I'm saying? So now it almost is like we've got the groundwork to see how he matures as a superhero and see how he matures as this character. But I agree with both of you. Like, they did their homework as actors. If you want to think like of a method actor or somebody like they became these people. And I've seen Zoe Kravitz in so many things. I've seen Robert Pattinson in probably everything he's done. And I've never seen him transform. And like you said, give these notes of where they were given this range, in certain scenes you were terrified of them, and certain scenes you felt their vulnerability and you wanted to cry for them. You wanted, you felt for him. But like, one of my favorite scenes is when he's, it's one of the very last scenes and he's with the Riddler and it's almost like he thinks that the Riddler knows who he is, because he's like saying,
you see that moment,
Bruce Wayne, and you're like, oh my gosh, he knows who Bruce Wayne is. Like, he's probably gonna, basically expose him. And you can see Robert Pattinson kind of, almost panicking. He's scared that he knows that this man is 3 steps ahead of him. And he thinks, okay, the big finale is he's going to expose me as being Batman. And then you notice that moment where the Riddler doesn't know who he is.
He says that's the only one he didn't get.
I gotta say,
do you think?
I think that the way that scene was written, I think it could go either way.
It could go either way.
I think that he did it. I think that the Riddler was saying to him, I'm going to say this in such a way that you will know that I know who you are. But anyone watching is going to not be able to think that I'm accusing you or calling you out. And that's why I think he was so shocked, because he's like, okay, he's about to drop my name and blow my whole world up. And then he kind of just subtly goes, he's the only one we didn't get. Like,
see, that was the point.
And he looks up at the camera when he says it. And that
was the point that I thought. I thought that was like the one moment where Batman was like, okay, he got caught slipping. Like that was the only moment.
Yeah.
The way that I interpreted was that was the only moment that the Riddler got caught slipping, because he goes, he's the only one we didn't get. And so I was like, he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know who he is, or you know, I don't know. But it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, it was, but again,
It
just goes,
gave us both.
yeah, it could go either way. It could definitely go.
You can think this and be justified. You can think that and be justified. And I think, again, it goes to the brilliance of the writing and the acting. Can I just take a side here to talk about what a guy that a lot of people don't know? His name is Paul Dano. Now, you probably saw Paul Dano for the first time in Little Miss Sunshine.
Yes.
You might not even remember, like, who. You watch it and you're like, oh my God, there he is.
Paul Dano's the Riddler, for those of you who don't know who
he's the Riddler. Yes,
phenomenal.
he's the Riddler in this movie. He also played the son in There Will Be Blood against Daniel Day-Lewis, another artsy movie that went really, really big, but not everybody saw.
Right.
This was not a traditional choice of actor for this role. They could have gone 1,000 ways with a lot of actors who have done dark, superhero-y, murdery,
I think that added to how amazing it was, because I did not expect when we finally meet him to be this good.
Like, when they finally meet him outside of his mask, we're like, that guy? Like, hold up. And then when you see him going into character, like once he's talking to Batman and he really gets to like emote and you see the emotion in his face and oh my gosh, you're like, wow, like that for him is a masterclass. And I think that I don't know if he's going to get Oscar nominated, because movies like this often get pigeonholed for soundtrack and special effects. But oh my gosh.
Well,
the reason why we were so scared, and the reason why we bought into the horror aspect of this is because of his performance. If he had dropped the ball as the villain, none of this would have worked.
Yep. He
sold we would not be talking about this movie. And oh man,
I was just gonna compliment what you're saying, because he reminded me when I finally got to see, and I loved how they did it. It was just brilliant, the cinematography, how it worked, and they knew how to just wait to the right moment to show his face. But what I loved when I saw him, it immediately, because I'm always connecting like dots in my head, like, what does this remind me of? What does this remind? And it reminds me of Jeremy Renner playing Jeffrey Dahmer, and that was one of his first roles, and how he evolved. Come on, bro. I know what I'm doing. Like Jeremy Renner as a breakout, he was nobody. He was crazy looking because he played somebody crazy, but you never would have thought he would evolve into who he is now in Marvel, right? So I look at this kid who is playing, and I hadn't seen him in the other two roles. I love Little Miss Sunshine. I just don't even remember him.
But that's because he was like a different person,
right?
Like, that's how like
in the movie.
Yeah.
See, then there's that.
Yeah.
But listen, y'all talking about Mako. Y'all, we got to get to,
well, hold on, wait. About. Let me we're going to get to him in 2 seconds.
Okay.
But let me just say something about this guy. I think like the fact, like, you're right. When they cast him, I was like, him? Like, of all the people in the world, like, I was one of those people, because it was just, he didn't, but it made so much sense in this story, because the story was so timely, because it was like the guy, like he said, I'm the one who, I forget what the line was, where he says, I'm the one who blends in, or the one that's forgotten about,
He's invisible.
Yeah, exactly. It had to be an actor that was so unassuming to be able to, like, he took us from A to Z, but he had to be an actor that was so unassuming, and you wouldn't suspect that guy walking down the street to be this psychopath, to be this person who's like, all he's thinking about is the way he's going to destroy the world, literally burn it all down to the ground.
He represents the majority of people. Most of us feel invisible. We're just a number. We might be a vote. We might not be a vote. You know what I mean? It's like that's why I said that borderline psychoses. It was real easy to go,
right.
You know,
Well, that's
and
the
then
thing.
pull it
I
back and
think
go,
that's
whoa,
the
whoa.
beautiful part of the writing.
Mhm.
The writing has to be thought provoking. It has to be triggering. And it's almost
And
when
he
you write a
matched it.
villain,
His look matched it.
when you write a villain these days, you really need to go, you really have to see them and be a multifaceted character. Cause it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I hate the world, I'm gonna burn it down. That's boring. But when you get a
Yeah.
character who you're like, dang, this person was done wrong, but it basically essentially created this monster. It's so
Yes.
scary. It hits you in different places because you're like, that's what happens to people. Like, you always think of, how did that person turn into that? Like,
Right.
you know, I watch the news all the time and go, that was somebody's baby.
That's
At some
somebody's
point,
baby.
how did that person turn into that monster? But this
Yes.
movie really lets you, I mean, it really gives you an idea how someone can go
And that's
off the deep end.
Yep.
And
I thought that last line, we talked about it earlier, just in the last conversation between he and Batman, and how I'm not sure if it happened. I think it was in their conversation, but they were showing, like, you know, some other scenes, I guess, to describe what he was saying. But when the Riddler talks about it being an orphan, you know, he basically, what's the word I'm looking for? He contradicts his "we're alike" speech by saying, you wasn't no orphan. If you're rich, that ain't what the word is for you.
Right. Well, because he took all the attention. Yeah.
And it's like, well, now you're really making it make sense that y'all aren't alike. You're very different. I mean, you have some of the mannerisms, but your lifestyle is what really sets you apart. And again, essentially, and everything he was saying about orphanages and just kids, you know, just neglected, and
the system,
how they did the system, all of that was like, oh, he preaching. It's a word. It's a word in there, but again, we're trying to heal the world. Like,
right. Well, that's what you always say. Like, people will say, like, they'll go, I have this problem, I have that problem, and you're like, yeah, but we all had a problem. We all had something happen to us in our childhood. It's the choice you make. Are you going to be a survivor, or are you going to be a victim? Are you, you know what I'm saying? Like, where do you?
That's where sanity comes in, though. That's where you.
There you go. Yeah. Okay,
woo!
So the next person we have to, I mean, we got to give him a whole section, is Colin Farrell.
I mean,
he played the Penguin.
By the way, he was in this movie. You may not know it,
right?
But he was in this movie.
You want, like, you're gonna be like, who?
I want to see the papers.
Where? Yeah,
I want to see the papers. I want to.
I don't believe it. We need one of those.
You need to see the pay stubs. One
of those. We need one of those videos where they do the makeup and it's like, you know, time lapse.
Yes.
And he becomes.
Oh my gosh.
He became someone else. Like,
completely.
There wasn't even a mention of Colin Farrell, but he was magical. Again, the casting director
and was in the screen like, I don't see it. I still can't see it. I don't know where he is.
The casting director deserves an Oscar because he was transformative, and and the special effects makeup artists, they need an award as well. He was so good, guys, like so good. He basically took the nuances of everything that we ever knew as the Penguin, and again he approached it, and again this is kudos to the director, because the director sets the tone for the movie, and you do take after take, and he will say, okay, that's the one, when you're in the pocket of where he feels like you need to be as a character. But he was just like Robert Pattinson, just like Zoe, where it was all so subtly magical. Like, everything he did was just it was so phenomenal.
I think that was the writing, though. I think they wrote that character, because they could have gone in with the Cobblepot, character, like from the original, where he's like all super sarcastic, and I'm this character and I'm imitating penguins and all this stuff. Yeah. And they wrote him in as more of the backdrop. In other words, Batman in this movie is not just running around punching the hell out of everybody for 3 hours, like you might see in a lot of movies, right? This guy's actually doing detective work. And, the Penguin is a mob figure, someone who knows things, and he's actually able to get information from without actually beating the guy up. Like, he beat some people up to get to him, but then he's like, here, I want some information. And he's like, well, I don't know this and I don't know that. And he does a little interrogation thing. He gets the information, he leaves, and he leaves. And this is like how cops and
Mm-hmm.
detectives that you see in movies are like, this is another unsavory character who I don't like, who I'd like to bust, but I got bigger fish to fry.
Right.
So I
He's
just
not
need
what
you to
I'm
point me in the
chasing.
right direction.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this him playing what could be or could have been seen as a
Mhm.
minor or major character alongside the Riddler, et cetera, et cetera. He ended up being like, okay, you know what? I'm going to play this down. And he actually played it down almost to a point
Mhm.
where he wasn't
Subtle.
even being sarcastic. He was
Mhm.
subtle. He was nuanced. He was smart. You know, he kind of had this weird, hey, I'm a criminal, but I'm not part of the corrupt system, you know,
Right.
that you guys are fighting right now. That's over the top. That's not
He's
what
doing
I'm trying
something
to
different.
do.
Yeah, he's
Right,
doing
right. So
I'm saying
even
I'm in my lane. This is my lane with drugs.
Yeah,
Again,
right.
a
And
And he was
phenomenal
kinda
acting
he was like
performance,
the
man.
he was
Yes.
like the Huggy Bear of this movie, where you shook
Yes.
him down for info, you know,
Yes.
and then you left him and you went and did the important stuff. And it was like that, to play a competent and successful B character in a movie this
Yes.
big takes
Yes.
almost as much work as
Yep.
playing the A character, maybe even more.
Right.
Especially for someone like Colin Farrell, who
Yeah.
for the movies that you've seen, he takes over the screen in most of the movies he's in. And for him to
Absolutely.
say, okay, give me enough makeup that nobody
is
will know
hot.
it's me. Let me play this in a
Right.
way that no one has ever seen me play, and let my character be 2 steps away from the center of the story at all
Yeah.
times.
Oh,
I'm never going to be the subject of the story. People are going to see me, they're going to point, and then that's going to be kind of the extent of my limelight. And playing a supporting character in a movie like this, I mean,
yeah.
is as notable as almost anything.
He reminded me of Robert De Niro playing Capone. Like I had this
Oh my
mob
gosh.
you know, whatever
He had the look.
ethnicity. He
had it.
definitely yeah, it just put me in the mind of that. I was so happy that they went in that direction and didn't give him
Mhm.
flippers and shit, you know. But yeah, he was so dope. But I love that they set it up, because I felt like the way he stood on those steps, you know, once they caught, who I also love, Totoro. I mean, he's just like, come on. I've been with him since Do the Right Thing,
Right.
child. We've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
Everything he does is great.
since Spike
I'm
Lee
telling
brought
you,
him in.
casting was amazing.
It was wonderful. It really was just absolutely wonderful. But yeah, he was Colin Farrell. I watched the interview and he said he makes this joke about, they're like, how did you do with the weight? He's like, listen, I put on however 50, 70 pounds, 100 pounds every day and took it off quicker, you know, before faster than he could put it on. He took it off
Yeah.
every single day. And he was like, it's my diet, you know, it's just how I am. But yeah, brilliant. I looked in that face so hard and I could not see him.
I couldn't even see it, not even in the eyes. But that again,
he didn't even sound like himself. Like
right.
he even altered his voice. Like, really?
Again, that is like these.
Yeah,
I mean, everyone, the writers, the actors,
yeah.
the designers, the director,
anybody that
everyone did their job. Like they did their job. Now I will say this: it isn't going to redeem. I feel like DC, you are not redeemed.
That worked. You got work.
But this is a good start. Like I know there's going to be, you know, multiple movies, and I know they've got the people under contract, and we're going to see, you know, one of the okay. So again, big huge spoilers. So if you haven't seen this, at the end we get a glimpse as to, you know, the potential Joker who's in a cell next to the Riddler.
Is it the Joker?
It was the Joker, right?
I thought it was Two-Face.
Joker, but it's not Joaquin Phoenix.
Right.
So it's
is it Jared Leto? I thought it was Jared Leto, honestly. I thought
no, they're gonna have a whole other have a whole other actor playing.
Yeah.
And
it was the laugh. Yeah, that laugh, that Joker laugh at the end.
And when he turned, I guess, okay, you know what? It just reminded me of, it almost called, you know, how Two-Face had that one side, and that's why I was like, well, maybe that is.
This is a comic book world. This is a comic book world that anyone who reads comics, if you pick up a detective comic, a Batman comic called Hush, it's a graphic novel. This is the world in which the story is being told, but this is not the Hush story. Okay.
Yeah.
It kind of has a lot of the aspects of it, but it's not that story. The Joker in this universe, and DC has been dealing with the multiverse for decades. So there are different Batmans and different Supermans and different worlds, whatever. This world has a Joker whose face is horribly disfigured. And I mean, almost to the point where he doesn't have a face. So it's not the more subtle Joker of the Joaquin Phoenix. It's not the, you know, the more criminal minded, you know, mastermind, you know, everything burns of Heath Ledger. Right. He's going to be his own Joker. But he has a footprint in this world. You know, the gang, the knockout gang that you see in the beginning of the movie are all denizens of the Joker. Yes. They're all wearing Joker makeup. Yes. And so the Joker has already came and went in the world, in the story that we're seeing. And where they go with this established world that the Joker has already done something to, you know, if he's made enough impact that their gang's already, you know, kind of emulating him, which he does in almost all the universes. And he's in prison. And he's already in prison. You know, the fact that those two are close enough to even have a conversation means that, you know, the sequel that is to come, and I hope they do one if they plan on treating it the way they treated this, you know, is going to be, you know, it's going to be special.
I just don't want them to mess it up. Please don't.
You know what though? I don't think
that's what we say about all the DC movies.
That's what we always say. I think they stay true to this formula, and I'm glad he was so different from the other Jokers, because we've had one thing I will say. This is one thing that DC has been able to give us. We may not have liked the movie, or we may not have liked the version, but we've always liked certain characters. Like we've always liked, you know, like we loved Heath Ledger. We liked, you know, Joaquin Phoenix. Like we've liked certain things, but we didn't love like the whole project as a whole. So one thing I will say is I'm glad that they gave us, if he's a Joker, they gave us a totally different one, because he can't, like, you can't compare them to those phenomenal performances. You know, it has to be a different thing, a different lane. And again, that's why I think like the guy who played the Riddler, the guy, you know, Robert Pattinson being Batman, they've gone completely different, and it's worked. And they had to do it that way in order for us to take it as a new project and to love it for what it is, you know. And again, I think it's gonna be, hopefully, I mean, they realize this is successful. This is a successful rollout. This is a successful movie. They're gonna stay dark. They're gonna stay, you know, they're gonna keep scaring the hell out of us. Like it's gonna be a psychological horror thriller action film, you know.
Yes.
And
I'm here for it.
I can't wait. I'm not going by myself ever again.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. I loved all by
myself. Oh my God.
I loved all the riddles. I always thought that was part of the innocence for me, was at least have the riddles. And I was always 2 seconds late getting them, of course. But
I'm like, what?
And then I was like, I gotta write that down. I gotta make sure I write that down later. But my brain don't work like that. Hey, I got to stay in 17
I was worried about the riddles because they seemed a little simplistic when they were on the card, you know, like, oh, that's bad and oh, that's this. But they ended up being kind of like the key to that I don't even know what they call it.
That map
code.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah, where he had to like match up the code to meet the cryptic. That's it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So they are giving.
And I used to love those as a kid.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't. So those dumbfounded me. Even in the movie, I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at.
And let me say this: I never watched Twilight. I just wasn't a. I don't know.
I saw the first one and was
I'm gonna tell you, when I knew that Robert Pattinson had the gift to transform himself. If you never saw The King with Timothée Chalamet, Robert Pattinson plays a role in there. It's not a major role, but it's a major enough where he does not look like himself. He does it's just, he's brilliant. His accent, his mannerisms, his everything. He's like a French something high up, you know. But The King, it was a Netflix original, and I've seen it 4 times. Like, I love stuff like that.
See, now I got homework. Now I got
homework too. I've never seen it. I've never seen
it. Go watch The King. Y'all have to watch The King. I love it, and I love those kind of pieces. You know, I don't, not all of them, but I like that, and I'm a fan of Timothée Chalamet. So
Timothy
But
was
yeah,
great.
but Robert Pattinson in that role, I was like, oh, I like him. I just have never wanted to watch Twilight. But
him breaking out of that teen beat cover boy world that he kind of introduced himself into,
yes,
it was something that he's been trying to do since he turned like 30.
And
Yeah. I think since he left that,
it's been an
he
ongoing
left that
battle.
franchise, and then he like he disappeared for like quite a number of years because he was like, this isn't the career I was envisioning for myself. Like I wasn't trying to be chased by paparazzi, and like I think it just was, when you do those, I think when you do multiple films, like you sign up for one movie, it's this huge hit, then you can't even walk to the grocery store. And so of course, as an actor, he was the lead. He was like, oh, I'm gonna do, you make the money, you get the security, you establish your career. But I think at the end, he's even said in interviews, like it wasn't what he really signed up for. And he kind of was like, it was frightening,
because he's in that vortex. You get sucked into that, and again, I applaud anybody that can have that kind of career where you stick, Karen, you get to stick with some things and it becomes iconic.
Yeah.
You can't ever you can try to knock it, but I don't care. That is establishment. That is foundation. That is some
bread and butter. It's like part of your career. Yeah.
There it is. Well, and it's just a legacy. You're part of a legacy. So when you're there and you're part of something bigger than just you, I think that's phenomenal. I'll never knock it. So when I say I haven't seen it, it was just because, I don't know, I was probably watching Hunger Games,
Well, it wasn't for us. Like that movie wasn't, I don't think it was made for us. Like we were adults. We were, it was made for the teen scene. And
I tried to watch it and I was like, I'm not a 14-year-old girl, so I'm really missing a lot of what they're trying to do here. They're not talking to me. There's somebody on another channel.
Yeah.
And even as a 14-year-old, I'd be like, but she's not supposed to be watching that either because it's a little racy. They having sex and everything. I don't know.
Well, and the funny thing is I think that they made it, like you said, they made it for this teenage audience. But what surprised them was that it actually spoke to all these like single like moms. Like these women were like, like their 14-year-old inner child was going bananas.
Pedophile. Yeah. That's what y'all are. Y'all stop looking at these babies like that. The actors are probably grown doing that, playing young kids.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Just real quick, I just want to throw in there, in light of this Pattinson transformational movies that you should watch, along with The King, there's a movie that he did called The Lighthouse. And it was really dark and really creepy and really took you out of the Pattinson framework. And he did all of these in the lead up. The Lighthouse is only a couple of years ago. So these are, sometimes artists will do movies that kind of lead into a role. And this one, I think, is one where he was kind of prepping to take on darker roles as an adult actor. The whole movie's in black and white, and it's really, really good. And I don't know if it's on Netflix. I don't know where you can find it now, but it's definitely worth a watch if you can do it.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, and we've given you all the tidbits that we love the most. I mean, there's so much to this movie. Go see it. Don't drink anything prior to it, because I'm telling you, that last hour you're gonna have to pee like you. There's no moment you can't leave. There's nothing. You can't leave because it's so good, and it's so like you're just going to be, like you said, like Hilton said, you're just going to be sucked into this world. So there's no point where you're going to go, can I go to the bathroom? So plan it out properly. But I wanted to give another honorable mention to Andy Serkis, who played Alfred.
Who is my favorite? I forgot.
Yes. But that's the thing about this movie. Like, there are so many great characters. Like, we literally could spend another 20 minutes talking about 5 other people that just had a moment on screen or just had a few scenes, but were so impactful. He was a really good Alfred. Like he was different from what we've seen him. You probably know him from the Marvel movies, and he's very like
the Lord of the Rings, honey. He's gonna be Gollum. He's gonna be Gollum and Smeagol forever,
right?
Yes.
And in this movie, he was like that father figure to Batman. He was just that trusted friend. he would, I mean, it was just really, really cool. And
I cried.
And a very
Yeah.
well implied backstory. They really did not unpack it, but they let you know there's more to this man than him just being a
Yes.
butler.
Right.
And at some point, if they do sequels, we might see more of that story.
Yeah.
I love
And
it.
anyone who reads comics knows that Alfred's got some backstory.
He does.
Yeah.
Some really interesting stories to tell. And I would love to see an Alfred spinoff, like
Now-
with Andy Serkis.
Now
He
we
could
talked about
totally
that.
do that. He could totally have that spinoff easily. But you know what? That's the thing that I loved about the writing. They didn't force feed us backstory. Like, you know how they
Right.
give you like,
Right.
they just they let this story unfold naturally.
Yeah.
And they let this story have the shine. And they just gave, like you said, implied, you know, like it was just
Nuggets.
implied things, nuggets, to where you're
Mhm.
left wanting more. You're left going back reading the comics to just get the backstory on the stuff. You're like me, finding articles that the director, you know, interviews that the director did, and wanting to understand his intention on when he wrote this. And I mean, it was just phenomenal. So the writers,
Yes.
it's like they were another character in this movie too. The writers did the damn thing. But guys, I mean, we could talk about this for like 18 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I've
we could
never
get
felt this
another-
way about a Batman movie. Never.
That was really, really good. Really,
Never.
really good. Golly.
I've been
Yeah.
entertained by them, but I've never been like, I mean, the only word I can think of, I've never been this triggered from a Batman
Yes,
movie.
that's it. Like, we can love, like, I'm a fan of what I'm a
Mhm.
fan of, but this gets in your soul, it gets in your mind, it gets into your daily activities, what you are watching, what you're, you know, believing. It like makes you question your existence. Am I doing enough in this world? Like, what's my place?
I had chills. Like, I could,
Yes.
that's the only word I could think of. I was like,
Yes.
I had
Yes.
chills. I had
it's
chills.
it's just so relevant. It's unbelievable. But they did just a phenomenal job. And I was
Phenomenal.
skeptical. I was
Yes.
extra
And
skeptical.
I
you
was
don't
too.
have to have ever seen any movies before this to see this.
Nope.
You don't have-
Nope.
There's no prequels.
Another
Good
good
note.
You
one.
know,
Good
if you
note.
know the general broad strokes of the Batman
Yep.
mythology, you're good.
Batman.
Just
would
walk in and see
actually-
it.
Yeah, I would want to see this one first, since it's so early on in his life and so
Mhm.
early on in him as the Batman. Like they said, this was only like he'd only been doing it for about 2 years. But guys,
Beautiful.
thank you so much for tuning in. We are the BOP, the BLERD official podcast. We love everything. I mean, we just love this kind of stuff. This was a great film. Go see the Batman. If we spoiled it for you, you should have seen it by now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. We
Press
waited 2
pause,
weeks.
honey.
We
Press
waited
pause.
2 weeks. That's gracious. You sometimes I'll
It
see
is.
reviews. I'll see reviews the next day, or like on a Thursday, and you're like, the movie doesn't come out for the rest of the world until Friday. What are you doing? So we were gracious enough to wait. Tune in next week. We will have more shows, more fun, and thank you. Bye.